My name is Maxim Vengerov, and this is Living the Creative Life.
Today we share an exclusive conversation with violinist Maxim Vengerov, a living legend of his generation. Here at Rare Violins of New York, 38 floors above Carnegie Hall, we catch Maxim between masterclasses and performances for a look at his life and work. Maxim, it's a delight to welcome you here to Living the Creative Life. Thank you so much for joining me.
Jolt, thanks for having me.
I wanted to focus on what we can give to the younger generation. And I had the privilege and joy of just witnessing here in New York City, where we are, right next door in Carnegie Hall, this masterclass that you were leading with young students. And I perceived that this was, among other things, an exercise in how to react to the moment, how to react to life and music. You were singing for us, you were playing for us, you were dancing around, you were showing us the minuet, and you were encouraging the students to have good humor. Was this the approach of your teachers?
I think all of them did something in different ways. I really had the training like of a combat fighter from every part of the area that one could need in music, because music is life. It's not only art for me. It's just stands just above just above the profession. For me, music is life. When I go on stage, it's like living the moment, and anything can happen, like living dangerously, and one could call it like a Russian roulette.
How much are you feeling the presence of the teachers you had?
Technically speaking, I had learned my technique so solidly from the early years that is really deeply engraved in my body, in my mind. I just always have to adapt it a little bit, because the body naturally has its changes. And Galina Turchaninova was always, for me, is always the reference of point of reference, where I always come back. And this is beautiful, because this connection with the instrument, this Franco-Belgium school, that what is the essence of Franco-Belgium schools, and that subsequently became Russian school, is the connection between the sounds. This legato, this beautiful, the right hand connections, and the vibrato, using the right muscles when you need to use them, and not using others when you don't need to. And the Franco-Belgium school is one of the greatest, and just name Wieniawski, Vietong, Isai, Chrysler, Heifetz. For instance, Galina Turchaninova, she gave me all her love for music, and she didn't want to touch my musicality. Strangely enough, she just gave me all the tools I needed to work. I learned the instrument at the age of 5 without actually knowing how I did it, like a child that started speaking language. So for me, playing violin, holding it, and it was something very extremely natural for me. But she let me always do and express myself in music the way I wanted. Now, when I came to study with Professor Braun after 5 years, he already insisted on his own view, and he actually imposed his views, interpretations, and all the. He wanted to change a lot of technical things, and I always asked why. Why should I change that? And so we had a bit of battle, you know. So it was a rocky road with him. But I think on the other hand, it offered me immunity to stand for my views, to defend my views, and also to be able to listen and process very quickly what can become mine and what, I learned to filter at a very early age what I love and what I like less.
And about learning to filter, what I hear you describing is a truly rigorous training. If we're putting on our battle armor, ideally, perhaps, the student learns that critical voice to advance their level. But that can probably get in the way on stage. Is that an easy mechanism for you to take yourself out of this self-critical mode, to live into what we were seeing in your class, the joy of making music?
I think stage is one place and platform where I'm finally liberated. Because look, you stand in the room, you practice. It's not always joyful, especially when I was child. I hated practicing because I had to do it for 7, 8 hours a day. It was the training, I wouldn't wish for my kids. But thanks to this training, also, at the age of 7, I already possessed necessary skills to perform all the major concerto if I wanted to. Now, today, I enjoy practicing much more because I do it because I just love it. Because, it's always reconnecting with the violin, with my soulmate, my partner, and taking the violin. And sometimes I look at it, I say, no, not now, not now. It will wait, And I watch a movie, I read a book. And then only when my body and my mind tells me, now is the moment, now or never. And I jump to the violin and I start playing. And then this connection is really overwhelming. And this connection comes on stage with me together. Because, after you learn something, you go on stage, you feel like you are a horse, ready for the race, but it's not the time yet. So, you just go like this. Finally, when you go on stage, and you're liberated. Your spirit liberated or must be liberated. Yeah?
Or how about dealing with situations where there is a direct judgment? For example, you, as a young child, you had some successes with competitions.
I was never spoiled in that regard. I always had competitors, always. And I learned to like having competitors. Because it was like this, that my first competition I won in Siberia, in Novosibirsk, I didn't quite win it. I shared the first prize. I was so offended. My God, my goodness, I didn't understand why I should be sharing the prize. Then I went to play the renowned competition for young violinists in Lublin, in Poland. And again, I shared the first prize. And only when I came to England and I won the competition in London, Carl Flesch competition. I totally hated the feeling of being alone. First of all, I didn't think I was going to win because everybody around me played so beautifully. And I was just practicing in the little hotel where there were rooms, like this, back to back, and I had two Chinese guys practicing Tchaikovsky concerto simultaneously, like a stereo effect, and I was stuck between them, and they were so good. So I said, I will not have any chance. And then all of a sudden, they called me for the first prize. I felt kind of, even embarrassed that I won it, and how so that was the feeling, and just to share this. And I think this feeling and made me humble in my life, that music is about sharing. It's not to win. It's to some degree, of course it involves the sports element, but it's an art, and there is so many artists around, and everyone has the right and can express him or herself in their own way. And it's wonderful to share this art, to play together, to make chamber music. And this is what I learned from my wonderful teachers like Mstislav Rostropovich. Music is about sharing, first of all.
So, speaking of competitions and the young people you encounter, in today's world, I perceive that there is a certain amount of pressure in succeeding rather quickly. Competitions, establishing a name, establishing some degree of momentum. Is there also maybe a benefit in not going so quickly, not succeeding right away?
The right timing is everything. For instance, if you're a teacher and you say, it's not yet the time, and you don't put any pressure on the student to learn something quick. Again, it depends up to the student. Everything has to be tailor-made. And I taught for a number of years, and I know everyone is different. Some people need pressure. They can't. They can't be without pressure. Without pressure, they just collapse. And some people, the pressure, they are allergic to it. So I'm allergic to pressure. I think it's due to the fact that I was born and raised in Soviet Union that had this rigid system. For me, music was always about love and expression and freedom. And there I had to go on stage everywhere, not only in Soviet Union, but go outside. When I was about 11, 12, we started traveling. It was not about me anymore. It was about the country. And I hated that to some degree because, first of all, I had to practice more and at nights. And secondly, this pressure, this is unnecessary pressure. And I think the second competition that I did, Karl Flesch, even though I won it, it was unnecessary pressure because I didn't need competitions anymore, not for myself. I think competition is a great goal for a young person to study repertoire, because it's only in the competition you have to prepare for 3 or 4 rounds. Sometimes you have to prepare all the, some caprices, Paganini, virtuoso works, sonatas, 2 concertos, and this is good. But I would leave it at that, and then give the platform to musicians just to perform and share. But giving prizes, feels always painful for me, because first of all, you have number of jury members, and everyone listens differently. And I've been chairing for many times, chairing juries. Everyone listens differently. The music is a form of an art that you cannot touch, and everyone has different ears. It's a matter of taste. You cannot identify exactly. You cannot say this is great and this is not so great. And even intonation, you take the intonation, and one person can say, no, intonation is something that is evident. No, it's not. And I made an experiment without announcing who is playing. Before the first round of the competition in Poznan, I presented to my fellow honorable members of the jury 5 versions of Scherzo Tarantella by Wieniawski, by Heifetz, Milstein, Menuhin, Isaac Stern, and Oistrakh. And say, is this in tune? I said, no, this is absolutely not in tune. And we were struck that every musician had different intonation. But different intonation, that's what made them so personal. Because if everyone will have the same intonation, then everybody would be, this is already moving towards artificial intelligence.
So you described this unnecessary pressure, and then at some point, hopefully, we learn to react against it. Is that where humor comes in? I was observing in your masterclass, you would actually instruct the students, now would be a good moment to smile. Now would be the moment where with your left eye you look this way to your colleague, and then you give them a nice little surprise. Is that where you developed this reactive sense of humor?
Music is fun, and I always had so much great fun with music, and especially when I came to the West, and I felt sort of liberated, not only in travel conditions geographically, but also I started meeting musicians. And when I met Rostropovich, he became like musical father for me. From the first lesson, it was always images. He would never tell me what to play and how to play, but would translate everything into images, and images would stay with me. And he was an incredible person that had such vivid imagination, and always put the score first. For him, he taught me, when you play Beethoven, you cannot play yourself. You have to try and express Beethoven. Try actually think that you are Beethoven for the time that you interpret the work. So for me, playing concertos, or right now I'm in Mozart because we did this great project with Orpheus Chamber Orchestra and 2 evenings of complete Mozart concertos in Carnegie Hall. So for some weeks I was really working on Mozart. So to the extent that you go on stage and you try to visualize you are Mozart, you're wearing a wig, and that's what I try to translate and transmit always to students. Offer us audiences a voyage, a time travel, because to a certain degree, music offers this time machine. It's a time machine. When we play Baroque music, when we play Shostakovich, we go to another area, to darkness. If we speak about his 10th symphony or first violin concerto or 8th quartet, So we cannot just be today and play ourselves and take the music and express ourselves. No, we have to offer that. For me, musician to a certain degree has to be also an actor.
We're talking about a life which is so immersed in our passion, hundreds of concerts a year. I hear colleagues describe perhaps a yearly or even a daily process of wanting to quit, or at least step away. What's the value in stepping away from what we do in growth, or perhaps finding an inner strength?
I think it's important always to take distance. I remember at some point when I was 25, I felt that I needed a change in my life. It was always violin, violin, violin. And then I said, no, it cannot be only about violin. I need to become more rounded musicians. And having such great teachers like I had, just to name 2, Rostropovich and Barenboim. For me, the bar was very high because they weren't just great instrumentalists, but they were conductors, and Rostropovich was a fabulous pianist as well. And speaking to them, they feel so humble. Rostropovich said, yes, I even composed 4 quartets, 2 cello concertos, but I burned them in the chimney. I said, how could you? He said, well, next to Shostakovich, I couldn't have the guts to release these works. So for me, having such great teachers always put everything in perspective. So when I was at the 23, 24, I said, yes, I definitely need to move on. And I took viola. And in 9 months, I prepared for the Walton concerto, which I recorded with Slava, with Rostropovich, and LSO, and Symphony Orchestra, along with the Britten Violin Concerto. So, and I noticed when I came back to the violin that my colors on the violin changed. They became deeper because my palette of colors, like the painter, became much richer. I inherited more colors just from another profession. Then I said, yeah, I have to move on. Then for a brief amount of time, like 2 years, I studied Baroque. I played the period instrument. I studied with Trevor Pinnock. We did the great tours where in the same concert we played period instruments and then the modern. Again, from that point of view, when I now play Bach on the normal instrument, I don't play on the Baroque, I can use this Baroque technique and these colors. Subsequently then, I remember I was 22 recording with Daniel Barenboim a Brahms violin concerto with Chicago Symphony. And in the first rehearsals, in piano rehearsal, Daniel would point out few things in the score. Say, look, you see, this is how violin must, merge the sound and really has with horn section. Can you try that? So and I tried and not quite there. Now the flutes are playing. You shouldn't be playing violin anymore. You should have the color of flute. And now this is cellos. Can you change? And I didn't quite get it. In the end of rehearsal, he said, well, this will come only when you will start conducting. And then I took 7 years of conducting classes with Yuri Simonov, who was for 16 years the chief conductor of Bolshoi opera in Moscow. And in the end of the studies, I even conducted Evgeny Onegin. So, and that, again, that gave me perspective, great perspective to speak the same language with conductor, with orchestra, totally different experience.
And to conclude with a joyful note, were there any moments in your life on stage, in front of a public, or in the practice room, where you felt suddenly as though you were in the presence of the sublime?
I always feel very humbled by the opportunity that life has given me to be with my music every day. I remember when I was a little kid, first of all, observing my mother being a choir conductor and a teacher. She was a prolific musician in Siberia. She founded her orphanage where she organized a music school there, and she helped lots of kids. She rescued them from streets, and she offered them a great alternative music. And I saw with my own eyes how music incredibly and profoundly affected these kids. So basically, after having nothing, they had everything. They had life and they had music. And if you think about that, musicians, we're so lucky that from early on, we have the greatest tool to better ourselves every day. Because music, what it means, music is great discipline. We have to work on our spirituality, on our physics, is everything, all in one, from early ages. Of course, everything comes with a huge responsibility because nothing is ever guaranteed. Musicians have to start so early on, at the age of 4 or 5. Some start a little later, but at some point it may be too late because being a violinist involves a very small motor muscles, and even if you became good violinist at the age of 17, you don't have the guarantee you're going to become professional. So you have to love music unconditionally and treat this profession as not only your profession, but as your philosophy of life, as your, doesn't replace religion, but close to it, definitely. And at such moments today, when we have the instabilities in every field of our life, I feel ever blessed that I'm allowed to go in front of audience and offer this amazing travel and experience for audience, for people that need it, using greatest music by so much legendary composers. And this is a true blessing of my life.
Maxim, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure, and I was so moved to also have the opportunity to witness you passing along these messages to young people who will be benefiting so much from our conversation.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
So when's your next period of rest where you can just spend time with your family?
Only end of for Christmas only.
Yeah, you have some holiday.
Oof, now this year has been crazy.
I can imagine.
Since June, like non-stop, I celebrated 50 years, and I did a huge tour in Asia and Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, China.
Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just there.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah, this is beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
And now US and Europe is quite a lot. I mean, all continents almost, apart from Africa.
so the airlines love you.
You did.